for our Laguna CNC. So a couple of things you need Fusion 360. If you just search student Fusion 360, you should be able to find the educational version once you make an education account. You'll also want to find the Laguna CNC Fusion 360. I believe we have the IQ, or maybe it's an IQ Pro. You can look on the side of the machine to find that info. But you need to download this. This is the post processor. Then the last thing you need is, we typically use Amana tools. Like, I think pretty much all of our tools for the CNC are Amana, and that's what we try to buy. And if you just search Fusion 360 Amana tool database, you'll find this .tools file that you can import. But all of this also can be shared with you. So within Fusion, you can do a couple different things. I'm going to show you two different ways to process files. So one would be a 3D model, that's your most common, and the other would be a 2D file, like an Illustrator file. So I'm going to just quickly make a 3D model. Let's make a cylinder that's like a 2.8 inch cylinder. I'm going to add a hole in it, and that'll give us some interesting stuff to work with. I'm going to extrude that, and let's say this is going to be in 1/2 inch material. So I've made my file. I'm going to switch from design mode, and if someone gives you an STL or another 3D model from like Tinkercad, you can always bring it in here that way. So we're going to go down to manufacture, and then within manufacture we need to do a couple of things. So one thing is we need to set up our file. So we hit setup. Within this, it's going to ask us to select our machine. So our machine is going to be our Laguna IQ, and I have this set up so that it works perfectly with ours. Again, like, I'll just give you this file and you can import it, but I also have them saved to the cloud, so if you're in our team, you should have this. So you just hit select. It selected our machine. This is a milling type operation, and then we need to pick our working coordinate system. So right now our working coordinate system is from the center of our box. Some people work from the corner, but this is just saying, where am I origining the or homing the CNC. So I'm going to CNC the tool head in the center of my material. I like to do it that way. Again, some people like to do it in the corners, but I like to do it in the center. And then the model that we're going to CNC should already be selected by default, but if not, you can pick it here. So the next tab is stock. So stock is the material we're cutting away. By default, Fusion uses a relative stock size, meaning it takes the size of your model and then just sort of expands it a little bit. We could also use a fixed box size, and we can say, okay, the width of our box is this by this by this, and actually type all that info in. So if we wanted to type in our material size, we could here, or just leave it relative. It's up to you. The important thing here is definitely the height of your material and your model position. So let's say the height of our material is 1/2 inch. And it converts units automatically for you. And we're going to make sure we go to offset from bottom and just double check on your side views that it looks correct and that it's sitting within your material. Okay. You can move your part around if you have a big, so if you set your stock size to be let's say it's a 4x or a 24x36 sheet and you build your stock that big, you could then move it and position it within that. And then the last one is the post process. So we need to give it a file name. So I'm going to call it circle. You don't have to worry with any of this, and just hit OK. So that's our setup. Our machine's ready to go. Now what we're going to do is we're going to pick our different methods, and it's these 2D or 3D methods of cutting. So within our 2D, we have a bunch of different options. Most of the time you're going to be using contour and pocket. That's like the vast majority of your cases. Contour is going to cut things out, so it'll cut out my outside edge, and I'll use pocket to cut out the middle. So let's start with my first operation, which is going to be a pocket, and I'm going to need to select a tool over here. So I'm going to hit select, and it brings up my tool database. Here's my Amana tools list. I also have a new file that I've made called tools we actually have. So this is like a tapered bit that we have, but within this we can find a bunch of different ones. So let's say we want to find like a 1/8 inch. Like we have this one for sure. Yeah, 46/100K. We own this. It's an 1/8 inch end mill. So I'll hit select, and you'll see it pop in there. The rest of this can all stay the same. That's why we have the presets. And then with our geometry, we want to pick our pocket selection. So I'm going to pick this bottom line here. I think you can pick this top line as well, and it's not going to matter, but I'll pick that it's going to cut out. And then we can, there's a little arrow right here. Sometimes you'll see this whenever we're doing 2D stuff. You'll need to click this arrow to change what's being pocketed. It swaps it back and forth. So some of the stuff in here, most of this is not going to matter to you. But yeah, so don't worry about any of that for pockets. And then you have different heights. This part does matter. I usually go to like a front view to kind of see it. But the main thing that you'll notice is that our bottom height is at selected contours. And usually you want to pocket things out entirely. So instead I'll say the stock bottom. And it adds that line right there to the very bottom of my model. So that's like how deep am I going to cut. And then I actually usually offset it by like negative 0.05 millimeters, something like that. And then I hit OK, and now it's pocketed, and it does not look correct. So we can always go back in and change this by just double clicking it. I think it's this next tab under passes. Yeah. So under passes, so this is like how many passes do I do whenever I'm cutting, meaning how many depths. And this stock to leave is checked, meaning it's going to leave extra stock. If I uncheck that, we should be good now. I should cut all the way down. Yep, so let's hit OK and see what happens. Okay, that looks much better, but it's doing something really funky. Let's simulate it and hit play. Okay, it worked just fine. I think it's just maybe my rendering is a little funky or something. So, oh, you know what? It might be the depth of this tool. Let me pick a different tool real quick, because that's an 1/8 inch. So let me find a 1/2 inch tool or a 1/4 inch. So I'll do this, an end mill. There you go. Okay. I'll hit OK, and it should recalculate that. And that looks a little bit better. Yeah, the issue is that my tool actually wasn't tall enough to cut that in one pass, and I was trying to have it do in one pass. Again, you shouldn't have to worry about that if you're using the right tool and you understand how this machine works. You should be fine. So it's pocketed that out. This operation says it's valid. So let's go ahead and now do our next cut, which is going to be a contour. So I'm going to go here and go to 2D contour, and it wants my tool. I'm keeping the same tool, and it wants the right now it's actually having me select the contour it wants to cut. So I'm going to just pick this bottom outside one. And again, you can see there's this arrow. This arrow is saying like what side am I cutting on. So it's going to cut on the outside of that line, which is what we want. So what we're going to do is we're going to also add some tabs, but I'll hit OK and we'll just see what that looks like. So I'll hit OK, and there you go. It cuts it out, so that's good. Let's double click it and get back in here. So what we want to do is we want to add some tabs. So I can check that box, and it should just automatically add them. If not, you can also change this to at points if you want to click and manually add tabs. Just make sure you pay attention to like how tall is your tab, how wide is your tab. I usually like to do tabs at least like 1/8 of an inch tall. So I'll switch this to by distance again and let it do its thing automatically. And then over here I have different clearances. So my bottom, again, I'm going to do that same thing of like, I just always do stock bottom if I'm cutting something out, and do minus 0.05. And then in this one right now, it's going to try and do all this in one pass, and you really shouldn't cut deeper typically per pass than the width of your tool. Sorry, my cat's yelling. Than the width of your tool. So the width of our tool, the diameter of the end of our end mill is 1/4 inch. So we really shouldn't have a pass deeper than 1/4 inch. And right now we definitely do because we're cutting 1/2 inch material in one go. So what I'll do is I'll check this box that says multiple depths. And it's asking what's my maximum roughing step down. So what's my maximum height that I can step down per roughing pass, which is what most cutting passes are. And you could actually just type in, it's kind of cool, tool underscore diameter will just automatically do that for you. And then a finishing step down is like, so usually like it would cut a pass, then go deeper and cut a pass, then go deeper and cut a pass. And then at the end it would do like a finishing pass to kind of give you a nice edge. So if you wanted that, you could add that here. I'm not going to bother, but I like to do a tool diameter, and then that's all fine. Yep. All those settings are fine. I like to also use, there's an option in here that says like keep tool down. Let's see if I can find that. Oh, here we go. So it's under linking, and we just say keep tool down. This is going to give us an error, by the way, because of our passes. So we'll hit OK. It's going to say you want to ignore the warning. You can ignore this warning. It's not a big deal. It'll just give you a little error right there, but that's fine. So now what we have is a multi-pass and multiple depth cut with some tabs. So let's hit this simulate button right here. Let's hit play. You can watch it. This is your speed, by the way, so if you want to play it back at a slower speed. So it's going to cut once and then go down and cut again. Okay, exit simulation, so that's all good. I'm going to save this file real quick. I'll call it circle. And once we're all done with these and we're good to go, what we want to do is we want to click back on our machine right here. This is super important because if you have one of these selected, it'll only export that one. The ordering here also matters. We always want to contour at the very end. So I'm just going to click on this setup, and there's a couple little buttons right here. One of these is post process, so I click that. It opens this up. It says what machine you're using, what posts, which that should be the post file that you got from Laguna, and then the name, and then where do we want to save it. And then I always leave this as document unit, and then we just hit post, and that should generate some code. So now you have in your downloads that file, and that MMG file is what you would then put on your flash drive to then put on your CNC and run. Okay, so let's do the same thing. Let's make a new design, and this time we're going to do a 2D design. So this is pretty common where you might have like a shape and some sort of line. Here we'll do like a funky contour. And we want to cut this, like this shape out. In fact, actually in our sketch, let's just trim this down. Whoops. Trimmed a little too much there. Okay. So let's say this is the sketch that we want to cut. And if you have like an SVG, you can do this. Same process, you're going to go to manufacture. Within manufacture, we're going to go to setup. We're going to select our machine, so our Laguna. We're going to, our stock point's fine. Let's do a relative stock side stock. I'm going to just do like a 10 millimeter on all sides and a 0 on the top. Or we actually want to give it like, we're going to say 0 on the top, but what happens when we do that is that it's paper thin because this doesn't have any dimensionality. So we need to tell it how tall it should be. So let's say, in this case, we're going to do 1/2 inch, or let's do 1/4 inch this time. So 1/4 inch, okay, and it auto converts it, and now I have my stock. Now this should really, this like top offset, or if you're not doing a relative side, just your height, should be something that you caliper and measure that way. It shouldn't be like a whole number like this. So I'll hit, give it a name, you know, final program, I'll call it like swirl, hit OK. All right, so this one we're going to just do a simple contour. So I'm going to do a 2D contour, and I just pick my line, and I pick my tool. So this one, let's do like a, let's do something funky like this tapered bit. All bits, by the way, have like a little identifier on the side, so you can always look at what we have and use that. And then we've selected this. Now what you'll notice is this little line, this little arrow, again, is really important. If I click it, that's cutting on the outside of the line, this is cutting on the inside of the line. So we want to cut on the outside in this case. We're going to add some tabs. That's a lot of tabs, so I'll probably do far less than that, and instead do add points and just pick 1, 2, 3, 4. And we got to get our height set up correctly. So let's say from the bottom, again, I always just do stock bottom, but you can leave it how it is, and we'll offset it -0.05. And we're going to do multiple depths, just like we did before. And we'll do tool, diameter. This is weird, though, because of how this tool is. That would give us, well, here, let's see what it does. So whenever I hit OK, I think it's going to give us like just a ton. Also make sure stock to leave is not checked. Okay, cool. And linking, we'll do keep tool down. All right, so let's hit OK. So that's not bad. It just gives us a lot of passes. It's actually not bad at all. We'll just leave that. But you could probably cut more. Because this is tapered, it's just taking the diameter of the final taper. I think tapered bits, you can actually go like a little higher than that, but that's okay. So we're going to look at the top view. Does that look good? Yep, it's got the little bits that are the tabs. And we're going to export it by clicking back on our setup and hitting post process and saying post. So that's the basic process. Some of this 3D stuff I'm not going to get into, but really like 99% of the time you're using pockets and contours, and that's it. You can look through some of these other ones and figure out exactly what they are, but they're much more advanced. So once you add ramps and things like that, it just becomes a whole other thing. And I'm sure you guys can figure it out, but that'll just be something to do maybe at a future date once you get this kind of down. So that's the whole process. Once you're done here, you're going to take your MMG file, so the file we just exported, drop it into a flash drive, plug that flash drive into our CNC, and then we got to do the actual mechanical stuff on the CNC.